I need Brunt and 4 volunteers, please. Come, don't all jump at this. Don't worry, you're not, that's not loud. You're not going to get into any trouble. I just need a little bit of help. There we go. The ladies are always the bravest. Come, Caleb. One more. Just to fill up. Okay. What I need you for to do is just follow Brunt's example. All right? He's been prepped. Imagine the year is 1865. You are trudging along drearily across the vast American prairie on your horse or on your wagon with the sun beating down on you. They don't look like they're trudging. And you're heading west. You're accompanied by a group of soldiers that are there to protect you, and you are moving towards the west. You are looking for a new future. You want to establish a new farm, forever, a future for yourself, like I said. Sorry. Suddenly, you hear a scream. Indians. And you look around, and you look up on the ridges on either side of you, and you see thousands upon thousands of red Indians. War paint, sitting on their ponies, bows and arrows, rifles, everything. And it's a scary sight. You have to make a decision. What are you going to do? Are you going to run for it and try and see if you can outrun them? Or are you going to stay and fight? Either way, it's a risk. So quickly you gather your people around, come, and and you have a strategy session, and you decide what are you going to do. Okay. Run, I don't want to die. I'm pulling my microphone. All right, so what happens is you decide the best alternative is to form what they call a wagon circle. So the officers, the lieutenants, you get your settlers together, and you get the wagons put into a circle. Now, the idea of the wagon circle is that you have an enclosed circle, and you are inside, and you are protected. So you have yourself as the officer, and you're giving the instructions to your lieutenants or your officers, and they are giving the instructions to the other soldiers and the cowboys and the farmers and whoever they are with rifles. And suddenly the Indians attack. And there are thousands of them, wave upon wave. These Indians come at you, firing arrows at you. And everybody's in their position, and they are dedicated, and they're firing, and they are defending, picking off the Indians one by one. And eventually, you are successful, and you kill off the Indians, or those that are left all run off, and they flee for the hills. But unfortunately, this is not always the scenario. Sometimes, some of them break rank, and they decide that they want to run for the hills. They're scared. I don't want to die. And they think they can better defend themselves. And in a case like that, what happens is that the Indians will come through the breach in the defense, and you will 10-1 get overrun and get killed with all the Indians. Thank you. Wasn't that hard? The question that I have for you today is, why do you think Brunt or the guy on the slide decided to run for the hills? Why didn't he stay and fight? Safety? Fear of what? Of dying? I'll tell you what it is. He didn't trust the person in charge. He didn't trust the leader. Now, I think this is where I might need Sena's help later. I have a concept that I want to introduce to you called LeaderRings. And if you look at the same concept with a wagon circle, it is a circle. Somebody referred to Simon Sinek earlier, suppose it would be similar to what Simon Sinek would call the circle of safety. It's the outer ring that protects everybody on the inside. But if I am facing one way firing, there's somebody on the other end of the circle that's facing in another direction firing, and there's somebody behind me that's supposed to be giving me guidance and advice. I need to trust that person. If I don't trust that person, I'm going to run for the hills. Now, just to go take it a step further, that's one. If you carry on, you will have leader rings within leader rings. So the leader ring is you have the outer ring, which would then be your organization or your club or your family, and you would then have levels of authority within the rings. And you will notice that the red dot in the middle, that's you as the leader. And you are the arrows aren't facing inwards towards you, they are facing away from you. So your responsibility as the leader is to have the back of the person that reports to you or that's below you. And if you listen to all the talks we've had today on values, on Kun's talk, all of the talks that we've had, if you possess those attributes, then it means that you will be able to have the back of your followers. Similar to servant leadership. If you have a look in the last couple of weeks, Kenneth Blanchard has brought out a new book on servant leadership in action. John C. Maxwell, I got a video clip from him about 3 days ago. He's also onto the servant leadership bandwagon. Sorry, that sounded derogatory. But people are starting to realize that it's not, we have to change. It's not about the leaders in charge and it's all about me. It's now about looking out for the people around me. I think Paul was that used Richard Branson's famous quote about forget the customers, look after your people. If you have your people's backs, they will automatically have the backs of the customers in that. So it goes on. So you have them leader rings within leader rings within leader rings. Obviously depending on the size of the organization. The question is, how do I develop these leader rings? How do I develop this trust as a leader? Now, the book that I'm offering for somebody has 3 distinct tools in it on how to be what we call the catalyst leader. That's another one to add to your list. Catalyst, if we use the dictionary, will tell you it's somebody that creates change. So as leaders today, we need to change. We can't expect our people to change to suit us. We need to change. We need to adapt to have their backs. So I want to share 4 broad areas with you that will help you develop this trust as a leader. First, I want to tell you a story. My daughter works in Qatar, in the Middle East. She is the head of the ballet department. She teaches ballet, she teaches physical education and swimming. And when she was interviewed for the post 2 years ago, there was heavy emphasis on teamwork and supporting one another and communicating back and forth effectively. And she thought, these are the guys I want to work for. Going back to the values. Those were their values that she perceived. Her values were the same. She wanted to work for that organization. And that's it. She got the job and she was stoked and she packed the bags and flew off to the sandpit, as she calls it these days. As the year progressed, the first year, she got more and more despondent. Her direct superior, which was the deputy headmistress, never had any time for meetings, never responded to her emails. When she had to get quotes approved for a ballet show that was in 3 weeks, nobody would approve the quote. She didn't know where the money was coming from, and she got really despondent. She became part of that group at the back of Paul's wagon. She stuck it out because the money's good, and another 2 or 3 years she'll have enough money to start her own dance school. But she was losing her oomph. She wasn't putting in any effort. The reason being that she didn't trust her leader anymore. At the beginning of the year, because now in a couple of weeks' time they've got to renew the contract for the next 2 years. Beginning of the year, she decided to put in a proposal where she would benefit financially, but the school would also benefit financially from the ballet program. It took her 3 weeks to get a 5-minute meeting with the deputy. And when she got to the deputy looked at this one, looked at this and said, the CEO won't approve this. That was the end of, forgot I had a microphone. That was the end of the conversation. And she was heartbroken. And she had to decide, was she going to renew a contract? Wasn't she going to renew a contract? But the money's good, she decided to stay. The 4 things that you require to be an authentic and a catalyst leader is, firstly, you need to act like a leader. Remember, being a leader is not a position. It's a choice. If you get promoted into the next level of authority, it means that you're in charge. It means that you have authority. It doesn't mean you're a leader. If you don't act like a leader, you're simply just another manager. A leader needs to have the back of his people. And you've heard it from all the talks this morning. It's about your value system, those core values that you have. In the case of the interview, when you have the interview, you tell the incumbent employee those core values of your organization or your core values. And they have a look and say, yes, these are similar to my values. I want to work for this organization. But then you need to deliver on those core values. You need to make sure that you are emotionally intelligent by understanding your emotions and the way you act, how it impacts on other people. You need to be disciplined. If I say something, my word needs to be my word. If I say that I'm giving you off on Friday at 3 o'clock, then I mustn't at 2:30 on Friday say, but hold on, you know what? We now have this, and I need to keep my promises. I need to follow through on my word. Most of all, I need to follow through on my actions. I need to see a job through to the end as a leader. You need to display those attributes that have been discussed, and you need to be the part. Otherwise, you're just another manager. Another part of a leader is that as a leader, one of your main functions is to cultivate other leaders. So you need to teach and you need to mentor. I need to constantly, as a leader, if I want you not just to follow me, but to develop leaders and create more LeaderRings and grow my organization, I need to develop the leadership skills in you. So we've already covered the part that I then need to actually act the part. I need to set the example. But in teaching you, I need to allow you time to develop those skills. I need to tell you what skills you require, and they need to be in line with my core values. In the book, we talk about your message, which could be your vision, your mission, your core values, those non-negotiables. That's your message. Mentoring is different to coaching. Coaching, I tell you, do that, take that bottle, put that bottle over there. No. You must put it over there. There's no room for you to grow. But mentoring, I allow you to grow. And one of the best tools we know these days for mentoring is delegating. I take one of my jobs or one of my functions, and I identify potential in Siggy, and I then get Siggy and I get him to start doing some of my functions. In other words, I'm training him to take my position, to be a leader. I'm not going to go into the rules of delegation and why delegation is important, but it does two things. Firstly, it allows him to develop his skills and to grow, but it also frees up time for myself to maybe in turn learn new skills myself and move up the ladder and advance as a leader. Delegating is different to issuing a task. We know that. Delegating, I give you one of my jobs. But also what's important with delegating is that if you make a mistake, I can't just suddenly say, oh, hold on, take it away. For me, the most important part of delegating, which is going to be the fourth point that we talk about, is communication. If I'm delegating to Siggy because I identify a potential in Siggy, and I don't communicate correctly to him as to why I am giving him the work, he might think, you're picking on me again. Just another job. And it's extra work. And he won't realize what's behind it. Along with teaching and mentoring is empathizing. Now, I try to look for different words in that. But effectively, what it boils down to, if you are teaching somebody something, if you are mentoring somebody, you have to allow for failure. You cannot gain any experience if you do not make mistakes and fail from time to time. I look at my granddaughter. She's a year and a month old. It's this big thing now. She started standing, and last night, for some other weird reason, she likes Pink's music. So you put Pink on and she stands, and she goes there, but she can't get that first step. Every time she tries to do that first step, then she falls down. But eventually she's going to walk. She's going to carry on, she's going to try, she's eventually going to walk. But if I'm not going to allow her to fall down, she's never going to learn to walk. And it's the same in business. You have to allow for failure. I have an expression that I use that says failure is only failure if there's no experience or no lesson learned from it. So you have to allow for that. And that's where the empathy comes in. If we look at what most of the speakers have spoken about today, and they talk about the negative components, it's because what's easier? You don't do what I told you to do, I fire your butt out of here and I get somebody else in. It just becomes a lot more expensive. Those people that Paul was referring to that are on the wagon and that are behind the wagon, if you did some mentoring and you worked with them a little bit and you allowed them to fail and you were empathetic, I don't want to say sympathetic, empathetic meaning that I understand where you're coming from, I understand that you have problems, I understand that you have issues, but let me help you, let me show you how to improve, how to get better. If you did that, I'm sure that 10% in front in Africa would turn to 80%. Because we would have leaders that were leading people and had their people at the center of their focus and not themselves. The last point is communication. We all know, sorry, I don't know how much time I have. The biggest problem with these talks is I never can stay within the time limit. Communication is about, we've heard, there's so many cliches. It's a two-way street, and it's an open door policy, and all these fancy words that we use, but do we actually apply it? Now, if I look at all the talks that have been done today, even Senna's talk on IP, all of it requires some form of communication. And the communication needs to go bottom up, up, down, sideways, whichever way. There needs to be communication. If you go back at that, you look at the wagon circle. If the officer in the center is not communicating with the lieutenants, they don't know what to tell the cowboys at the front, and they don't know who to shoot at or what's happening or that. So that communication is important. But they also need to say, hold on guys, there's a whole new bunch coming from the east over here. We need to send more defenders this side. People coming up with ideas. All of those, that requires communication. And you need to allow people to communicate with you. So you need to allow your followers to make suggestions, give you ideas, come up with new plans, discuss their problems with you, and you need to communicate. So whatever your values are, the direction your organization is taking, if you're not telling the people, the guy that wrote the book with me started writing a book called Does Your Janitor Know Where You're Going?, which is actually a very good description of it. The cleaning lady needs to know what the vision and the values and the purpose of the organization is. Because at the end of the day, they're all on the same, traveling in the same direction. So communication is very important. My daughter's biggest issue that she has is communication. They're not talking to her. She was told communication, communication. She's sending emails, and it's like it's hitting a wall. So that's important. I was going to tell you a quick joke about communication. There's this husband and wife. They've been married for years, and they get into this incredible fight, and they decide, that's it, what we call in Afrikaans a skietstilstand. And they're not talking to one another. But they have kids, and there's things that need to be done. So they decide they need to find some way of communicating it, but they want to talk to one another. So they decide they're going to leave little notes on the bedside table. Don't know if any of you've heard it. So the wife would leave a note, remember to pick the kids up after school. And the husband would say, my boss is coming for a lunch, make beef stroganoff, that type of thing. And one day the husband had to go attend a conference in another city, and he had to fly, and he left his wife a note and said, I need to catch a flight, please wake me at 5 o'clock. And he went to sleep. 7:30 the next morning, he wakes up, and he's in a spin, and and grabs his stuff and rushes off to the airport, books another flight, eventually gets there 2 hours late to the conference. That night he gets back home, he decides, that's it. He goes to his wife, he says, I asked you to wake me at 5 o'clock. She says, but I did. He says, you didn't. I was late for my flight. She says, look on your bedside table. It says, it's 5 o'clock, please wake up. All right, so you need to communicate slightly better than that. Koen had 3 legs to his pot, which are actually very similar to mine. Those of you who are teachers would know, people my age, we used to talk at school, we used to talk about the 3 R's, reading, writing, arithmetic. Well, I have 3 R's for you as a leader: responsibility, results, risk. It's your responsibility as the leader to make sure that everybody knows exactly where you want them to go. It's your responsibility to act in a way that you provide safety, or that you have their back, that they know, that they can trust you, that if you say, we are going there, they will go. Similar to when I was in the army, if the general said, run into the bush and shoot, you run into the bush and shoot. You're not worried about what's in the bush. It's because of that blind trust. If that happens, the results will come. If you're leading your people properly, if they trust you, if they enjoy working for you, if they enjoy being in the organization, the same as Richard Branson said, they will look after the customers. The results will come by themselves. And as the leader, you need to be in the forefront. That's why you're a leader and not a follower. So you need to manage the risks. You need to identify the risks. You need to calculate which risks are worth taking and which are not. The same as the commanding officer. Do we stay and fight? Do we run for the hills? That's important. So if you apply those 3, I'm convinced that your people will trust you enough to follow you wherever you take them. So my question to you is, where's your West?